Hola, soy yo, Vicki otra vez. Okay, in today's video, en el video de hoy, I'm just going to, lots of people ask me, how did you learn Spanish? Because they say, have you always spoken Spanish? Did you do Spanish at school? Did you do Spanish at university? No, I came to Spain 25 years ago, more or less. Maybe a little bit more now, which is a bit scary. I knew no Spanish, only the usual like gracias, buenos dias, you know, maybe a few words that I'd picked up, that I'd learnt. I didn't speak any Spanish. Within 2 years, I was teaching Spanish, only to beginners, but I was teaching Spanish. So, let me share with you how I learned Spanish. You can learn Spanish quickly. You can learn it well. You won't learn it in a week. You won't learn it in 3 months. It may even take 2 years, as it took me, but you can do it. So, what's the secret? Right, first thing is you have to really try. Now, you know, all due respect to anyone who feels like I'm referring to them, but I have students, they don't really try. They come to class, they think, you know, by some osmosis, they look at the book and do, you know, an hour of class a week or 3 hours of class a week or however many, and by osmosis, they're just going to become fluent. No, it doesn't work like that. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. There's no good, you know, whenever my students come in on a Monday morning and I always say, oh, ¿qué tal el fin de semana? You know, how was your weekend? ¿Has hablado español? Have you spoken Spanish? And they go, no. Now, not all my students do that. The students I have that do well and learn Spanish, and in the end they don't need any more classes. These are the people that go out of their way at the weekend, because then I will ask the person, well, where did you go? What did you do? They didn't go anywhere outside their comfort zone. They went to British bars, they went to British restaurants, they mixed with British people. Oh, there's nowhere here to speak Spanish. There's lots of places to speak Spanish, but you have to go out of your comfort zone. You can't just go to the same place. It's like that definition of madness, isn't it? If you expect things to change, then you've got to go somewhere different. You've got to speak to different people. So the students that I've had that have done really well with Spanish, that's what they've done. So you have to really try. Really try. You have to do the exercises in the book over and over again. You have to practice them. You can read them out loud to yourself. You don't, you know, but you have to try. It won't just happen without effort. So the first thing I did to learn Spanish was I really tried. I realised quite soon after coming to live here, I couldn't live here if I didn't speak Spanish. I had a 9-month-old baby. And I was on my own here with no friends, no family, and I think it all came to a head when he was ill, and I had to take him to the doctors as a baby. He was a baby, and I couldn't communicate. It was heartbreak. I was terrified because I couldn't communicate to them what I was trying to tell them about, you know, his symptoms. They couldn't communicate to me, and at the end of the day, I'm in Spain. Now, you know, a lot of people complain about immigrants not integrating, not learning the language, etc. When you come to Spain, you're in Spain. You have to learn Spanish. If you don't have to. You don't have to learn Spanish to go to bars and restaurants and enjoy your life. You have to learn Spanish if you want to deal with problems. Because the medical centre, the school, all the official, they're not required to speak English. English is not their first language. They have many different nationalities come here, not just English speakers. So they're supposed to speak German and French and Belgian and Russian and Ukrainian and all the different languages? No, they can't. So they speak Spanish. So I feel like I'm being a bit hard on people today, but I sort of feel a bit like that because people always say, you know, how do we learn Spanish? Try really hard. Okay, now let's look at some more practical ways. So, good ways of learning vocabulary. Vocabulary, I can never say that word. Do your shopping list in Spanish. That's what I did. So I would write all my shopping lists in Spanish because I don't know about you, so I've sort of forgotten what it was like when I'd be looking for conditioner, hair conditioner for dry hair or whatever, and I didn't know how to say that. So you make a lot of mistakes, don't you? You buy a lot of things that are wrong because you don't know the words for the thing that you're looking for. So yeah, do your shopping list in Spanish. It's all, you know, in the area that I live, or not where I live, but close by where I live. I know if you live in an expat enclave, it's easy not to speak Spanish. It's easy to go and speak English because most of the shops, etc., will speak to you in English because they know they're in an area where a lot of the customers are British. But believe me, that's all fine and good when you're buying something. When you want to take it back, complain about it, etc., you'll find it's different. So yeah, write your shopping list in Spanish. Very good idea to do that. And that way you're learning vocabulary. I really cannot say that word. Now, another way, a good way of learning vocabulary around the house I found is and I've done it with children in class. So you write little post-it notes with all the names of the different things in the room. So, for example, in the kitchen, so you've got a post-it note on the fridge, frigorifico, post-it note on the table, mesa, chair, silla, etc. Horno, oven. So post-it note on you can do it in every room, in the bedroom, the living room, etc. And then so every time you go to those things, you see those words and say them. So every time you turn the TV on, you say televisión. That's a nice easy one actually. But every time you sit in your armchair, you say sillón, because you've got el sillón on the post-it note on the chair. And then when you don't have to look at it anymore to see what the word is, when you just sit on it and you don't have to look at the post-it note, you take it off. So gradually, bit by bit, you'll learn all the vocabulary of the house that way. Take off the post-it notes as you go. Go out of your comfort zone. So this is what I was sort of ranting about earlier. And I didn't mean to rant, but it is important. You know, I know if you live in the Orihuela Costa, here near my area, it'd be difficult to speak Spanish because it's mainly British or foreign people who live there. Go up the road, 10-15 minutes up the road to San Miguel or Orihuela or Bigastro or some other place. There's lots of places you can speak Spanish, lots. You just have to travel out a little bit, not far, but out a little bit. Ask questions, imaginary questions. So I remember what I used to do. I would go into a supermarket and ask, where are the eggs? Or, you know, I knew where the eggs were, but it was just to get some conversation going, you know, just to practice asking something and see if I could understand what they said back. Good ideas are work, obviously, you know, it doesn't have to be a full-time job. If you can get a job somewhere with, this helped me a lot because I started work. I did classes, intensive courses, private classes. You have to do classes. I don't care what anyone says, at some point in your Spanish learning, you have to do some Spanish classes. You need someone to explain to you how the grammar works, otherwise you'll never really understand it properly. You might not need to do classes forever, but you need to do them for a little while. And you have to, you know, sometimes people don't want to pay for classes, but they don't mind going out and, you know, spending quite a lot of money on meals or whatever. Well, that's their choice. But then if you don't want to spend your money on classes, you're going to end up having to spend your money on interpreters. And if you don't want to spend your money on interpreters, you're going to struggle, you know, when something really important happens. So you've got to think, this is not forever that you'll have to do classes. You just have to do a few classes until you know exactly. Some of my students carry on doing classes for quite a long time, even when they've learnt Spanish, because they want to keep practicing. If it's going to be, might be 6 months before they ever speak Spanish again, they do an hour a week just to keep up the speaking. You know, so they don't lose it, so then they're not suddenly in a situation where they've got to speak Spanish and they haven't spoken Spanish for 6 months. You know, some people do that. It all depends on your budget, of course, and your availability and what you're prepared to do. You don't have to do, if you don't want to do a class every week, do one every 2 weeks, do one every 3 weeks, do one once a month. You know, there's always a way that you can fit in some classes. You just need things to be explained to you. If you don't want to do classes, you can buy my books and do them at home. The Break the Language Barrier series. They've got the answers in the back, they're self-explanatory, or maybe do one class every now and again just to ask the questions that have come up. So yeah, classes are important. Maybe a job. Now, if you're retired and you don't want to work, voluntary work. You can volunteer in a charity shop, or the Alzheimer's Centre. There's lots of places that you can, they'll be glad to have you, because they might quite like someone there who speaks English. Now, and I've had students that have volunteered for the Red Cross, for Reach Out, for, you know, homeless charities, etc. And it's been, obviously, they've wanted to help, but along with that, they've wanted to improve their Spanish, and it's worked in both ways. Spanish friends, try and get some Spanish friends. You know, it's difficult to integrate when you don't speak the language. Maybe you understand immigrants in the UK better, you know, they try their best, but you always feel more comfortable around people that you are from your same background. So sometimes it's an effort. I'm not saying it's easy, it is an effort. But if you want to learn Spanish, you have to make the effort. And texting is good if you can find some, maybe an interchange you can find, or you can find someone to exchange messages with. Messages are really good. Depending on your personal circumstances, maybe a partner, like a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That certainly helped me. I did go out with a Spanish well, he's still my friend, you know, I have Spanish friends, and it definitely helps. Obviously, the more opportunity you get to speak in Spanish, the better. Messages, especially because you've got time to think. It's difficult when you're talking because you don't have time to think, you're just like on the spot and you can go into a panic. Somebody sends you a message, you've got time to think about it, send the message back. You know, it's not so difficult. Other ideas are Netflix. Put your Netflix into Spanish. Go to the cinema and watch films in Spanish, not in English. TV, of course. Radio is really good for just background. Radio, YouTube, etc. You can, if you're in your car, you can just put something on the radio or put something on your phone on YouTube and just listen to it subliminally in the background. Anything is better than nothing. If you have children, you can read your children. This is what I used to do with my son. Read him books at night. You know, I always read him a story at night before he went to sleep. And I would read him Spanish books. In the beginning, I didn't have a clue what they were saying, but I would pick books like Three Little Pigs and Snow White, etc. You know, you can get these sort of books in supermarkets and things, and just reading them out, you're just getting your mouth around the words, you know the story, so you're picking up things all the time. You've got to really try hard. I watched a lot of Spanish TV. When I was learning Spanish. I never watch it now because it's terrible, but it's really good for learning Spanish. And the last thing I really want to say is, don't be frightened of going out and speaking. Don't think you've got to be perfect. You won't be perfect. It's impossible. You're going to go out there, you're going to make loads of mistakes. Of course you are. Because if you could speak perfect Spanish, you wouldn't need to be learning Spanish. You can't. So you're going to go out there, you're going to say things wrong. It doesn't matter. You'll get a fantastic reception just in trying to speak Spanish. For most Spanish people will really welcome the fact that you're making an effort to speak Spanish. You'll get a much better reception for everything. You'll get better treatment. You'll get, so you've just got to try. You've got to do things wrong quite a few times before you get them right. So if you're going out and you know you're going to have to speak Spanish, prepare for it. All the words that you think you might need, the phrases that be aware they are going to come back with things that maybe are off your script and you've got to deal with them. But certainly learn the phrases like más despacio, por favor, more slowly please. Puedes repetir, por favor, can you repeat please? Another one I think is good to start with is solo hablo un poco de español. I only speak a little bit of Spanish. Más despacio, por favor, more slowly please. So let them know that you're going to make an effort to speak Spanish, but you only speak a little bit of Spanish, so they're not expecting, they're not going to come back at you as if you're fluent. You have to slow them down, ask them to repeat. Don't be frightened of doing that. They'll be glad to do it. There was one other thing that I was going to say. So it's progress, not perfection. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. If Fred up the road is doing really well at Spanish and, maybe he's terrible at Spanish, but he's just got more confidence. But don't compare yourself with Fred anyway, because you are only in competition with you. If tomorrow you know 2 more words than you knew today, that's progress. If in 3 months you know how to ask 5 more questions than you knew before, it's still progress. Your progress is the only thing that counts. Doesn't matter how anyone else is progressing. Some people learn Spanish very quickly. Other people it takes longer. Some are better with grammar, some are better with speaking, some are better at reading and writing. You just have to find what suits you and not be worried. It's like, running a marathon. I can't run a marathon. Well, I could run a marathon. It'd probably take me a week to get around the thing, but I can do it. But I can't do it as fast as Fred up the road. But there's no point in me thinking, I'm not as good as Fred at the road at running a marathon. I do my whatever. Not that I'm going to run a marathon. Let's just get this straight. But if I did, I couldn't be thinking, I've got to keep up with Fred, because that's never going to happen. So I've just got to be honest with myself and think, okay, I'm not going to finish in an hour and a half like Fred did. It's going to take me maybe 6 hours to get around this thing, but I'll still do it. There's no point in competing with people when it's impossible to compete with them, if you see what I mean. It's like setting things too high. You just do you. You just learn what you can and believe me, it does change your life. I could not imagine living here and not being able to speak Spanish, because I couldn't complain. I wouldn't know if someone was being horrible about me, but also I think you miss out on a lot, because it's like only having sort of a quarter of the picture. There's a picture there and you can only see a quarter of it, because the other 2/3 of it are, the other 3/4 of it are forbidden to you, because you don't understand. So it enriches your life, just generally. Oh, and one other thing that is very important about learning Spanish is what it does to the old brain cells. So learning any new language, it's been scientifically proven now that if you learn languages, it helps your brain age and it helps prevent Alzheimer's. So what are you waiting for? If you're interested in Spanish classes with me, please contact me and we can see what I can offer that will suit you. If you can't come to classes or classes aren't your thing, there's my YouTube channel, obviously. Also the books you can buy on Amazon, which you can work through at home, and maybe do a class every now and again to go along with the books. You know, I can always offer you an option. Another reason for learning Spanish, of course, is the pleasure of it. You should, if you don't enjoy learning Spanish, you probably shouldn't learn it. You have to enjoy it. So, but the only way you're going to enjoy it is by being kind to yourself. Okay, that's it. Gracias. So te veo muy pronto en el próximo video y hasta entonces que tu Dios vaya contigo. Gracias.